Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR. We are presented and brought to you by FanDuel as we are live after the Michigan State basketball game. No extracurriculars after this one. Kind of got used to the extracurriculars after these games happened, but nothing after this one. I think Tom Izzo may have skipped the handshake line or something, so that may have been the most extracurricular. I don't know that for sure. It just looked like he was walking off while everybody else was still shaking hands. So who knows? But overall, great win for Michigan in this one. We'll talk about it all. We'll also talk about how a former NBA player, Charlotte Hornet, could attempt to rejoin college basketball, and former UCLA player, could he be back on his way to joining the Bruins? And then finally, a report came out on 3 from the Ohio State side that Ohio State is canceling their future game against Alabama and Georgia. I think this has a lot of implications for the entire Big Ten and kind of what we're going to see out of them in the future. So we're going to talk about it all. We appreciate you being here with us. Let's get to the comments first and foremost. We got Philip here with us as per usual. MSU's offense is literally Jeremy Fears or bust. I was thinking the exact same thing. Now, Jackson Kohler normally, comes through with some more offense for them, but I mean, he couldn't, he was 2 for 7 from 3 in this game, 4 for 13, just looked like he could never actually get comfortable. Damara, obviously that defense down there, my gosh, Damara is such a good player. He had gotten foul trouble there in the first half, but man, as soon as this Michigan team got a Damara and Morez Johnson, I was like, yeah, this is going to be one of the best front courts in all the country. Dave's here says, sometimes you let your little brother back in the game just to let them get their hopes up. You know what? I was a little brother with my big brother, and you know what? Sometimes he does do that. Sometimes it does happen. So Dave's obviously celebrating the Michigan win here, as he should. Philip says, I come away from this game less confident in both teams somehow. Yeah, definitely less confident in Michigan State. You were going to expect Michigan State to come back, right? I mean, that was one of the things. Michigan still got the double-digit win. I can see how you have some criticism there for Michigan a little bit, Philip, but I still look at this Michigan team, and they're just such a well-oiled machine. Elliot Cadeau coming out. Great stuff. Illini Bubba says, what a physical game. Wow, it was very physical. And that's one of the reasons why I love watching this Michigan State game every single time, with how physical it is and how much they get after each other and everything else. So great stuff there. Let's go ahead and get into the game a little bit and talk about it all. Michigan wins. Michigan takes down Michigan State 83-71. Elliot Cadeau for Michigan, 17 points, 3 rebounds, 6 assists. But it was Yaxel Lindeborg that had the big night, scoring 26 points, 6 of 13 from the field, 12 rebounds, got himself a double-double with 1 assist on the day as well. Michigan, they take the first spot. Well, yeah, I guess they do take the first spot. You're going to see Illinois and Nebraska play on Sunday, and whoever wins that game will be tied with Michigan after this. But so they await to be tied at the top of the Big Ten with whoever wins that Illinois-Nebraska game. But for now, Michigan top spot in the Big Ten. And honestly, at this point, with how we've seen the games go and everything else, sounds about right. Michigan, they lose one game to Wisconsin, and it was a game where Wisconsin was just kind of lights out in that one. I didn't think Michigan was playing poor defense or anything. Maybe could have been a little better in some areas, but Wisconsin was just doing a great job hitting their shots. And sometimes, in basketball, you just tip your cap and move on. You say it is what it is. But Michigan is just destroying teams right now. I mean, they've been doing it this entire time in basketball. Really, the only team they didn't destroy was Nebraska, who they look like one of the best teams in the country as well, with their defense, their 5-out offense, and everything that they can do. But this Michigan team, they just have so much versatility. They can beat you in so many different ways. Damara got in some foul trouble in this game, and so he had to come out for a little bit. But this Michigan team was fine on the boards. They were still fine getting physical with Michigan State. There's not a whole lot of things you can do to really fluster this Michigan team. And in the second half, Michigan State comes back a little bit because Michigan starts turning the ball over a little bit in the second half. Excuse me. In the second half, you had, or overall, all the turnovers, you had 13 turnovers overall in the game. I'm trying to see how many they had in the second half. I don't know why it's not showing up for me. I got to extend it out like that. Overall, in the entire second half, Michigan had 9 turnovers. That was more than double what they had in the first half with 4 turnovers there. So, I mean, Michigan State kind of got back at him a little bit, but overall, this Michigan State offense just was not good enough in this game. And credit the Michigan defense more than anything. Like, yes, Michigan State does have to, figure out what they're going to do on offense, because it can't just be the Jeremy Fears show. And when Jackson Kohler isn't on, the offense isn't there, right? You have to figure out more of what you're going to do there, but you got to give a lot of credit to this Michigan defense and the way they were defending this Michigan State team. In the first half, Michigan State had a number of turnovers. They had 11 turnovers in the first half. In the second half, they only had 3. But with how physical Michigan was getting with this Michigan State team, and really attacking their ball handlers and pretty much everybody that had the ball, they were up on them on the outside of the 3-point line every single time, and just made it really difficult. There were a few times here and there when Fears was able to get Carson Cooper loose, and he was able to score. He had 6 points on the day, but overall, if Fears wasn't scoring, there just wasn't all that much going on. Cohen Carr, I felt like, had a good game. He was playing some good defense, but at the same time, you're going up against the Axel Lindeborg. He's going to get his. I mean, there's not much else you can do about it. He gets 26 in this game. Overall, this Michigan team, they're just lights out at this point, and it's really, really hard to find a team that's going to stop them right now. So they're number 1 in KenPom before this game. I would think that they stay number 1. I didn't see if Arizona played anybody tonight. I think they were number 2. Yeah, Arizona number 2, Duke number 3. Illinois up there at number 5. Illinois, they got their game against Nebraska coming up. But overall, this Michigan team, they like I said, they lost that Wisconsin game. They followed up at Washington, at Oregon, Indiana, Ohio State. They were able to beat Nebraska. That was huge. And then at Michigan State. But pretty easy stretch for Michigan State for a few weeks. Penn State, Ohio State, Northwestern. UCLA will be tough, but you have UCLA at home, so there's a little bit of insurance there. But then you get Purdue on the road, and then you get Duke on a neutral floor, and then Minnesota, then Illinois, and then Iowa, and then to end the season, obviously, at home against Michigan State. I don't see a single game there that they won't be favored in. In fact, looking at KenPom right now, the closest game they have them at is 79-78 right now. That Duke game, they have them 77-76, so that one will be close too. But we'll see what Purdue is able to do. I think Purdue plays tomorrow or Sunday. It's one of the two. It's either tomorrow or Sunday. Let me double check really fast. I don't want to get it wrong. If you're listening to this on Saturday, it would be today. No, they play Sunday. Purdue plays Maryland on Sunday at Maryland. We'll see if Purdue can bounce back. All right, what are you guys talking about here in the chat? Dave here said that wasn't a particularly physical Michigan State game. I didn't even see a fight. yeah, no fights. I mean, you're right. From that aspect, it wasn't, but it was really good, really physical D by Michigan, especially there in the first half. So, talking about the Illini in there, yeah, they're going to miss Boswell in this game against Nebraska. I think you really got to put somebody on Price Sanford. I don't know if Andre Stojakovic is going to be the guy that's going to be able to stick with Price Sanford the entire game. So, Blue Wolverine is here. Oh yeah, you should be wearing the sunglasses tonight, Blue Wolverine. Feeling good about this Michigan basketball team. They might win it all. If I had to pick a national championship favorite at this point, I mean, Duke's really good too. Don't get me wrong. Arizona's really good too. But if I had to pick a national championship, favorite at this point, I'm picking Michigan. In fact, what do the odds say on FanDuel? Let's see what the FanDuel odds have to say about this one. Go over here to FanDuel. All right. Basketball national championship. Right now, plus 400 for Arizona on FanDuel, plus 500 Michigan, plus 600 Duke. So, yeah, if you believe this Michigan team's going to win it all this season, they're right there for you. Go put it on them, plus 500. Hockey W, basketball W. That's right. Feeling good about it tonight. I didn't realize the hockey team was playing. I got to watch more hockey. I watch so much basketball and so much football. So, Dr. Fakin says Big Ten power rankings: Michigan number 1, Nebraska number 2, and then it's arguable. Yeah, we'll see what happens with Illinois and Nebraska on Sunday. I do think that one will determine who is number 2. But you're right. Right now, it's definitely Michigan number 1, Nebraska number 2. Even if Michigan were to lose, which they're not going to lose. I mean, unless something catastrophic happens. But even if Michigan were to lose, I wouldn't move them off the number 1 spot. Purdue, Duke, Illinois, Michigan State. Those are kind of the teams left on their schedule they might lose to, but I'm not picking them to lose any of those games. I mean, this Michigan team, Dusty May's such a good coach. Dusty May's such a good coach. Dave's here says the Duke Michigan game is going to be great middle of February. It is. It is for sure. So, hey, Dr. Fakin, super chat. Appreciate that. $5 super chat says cool show. Hey, appreciate that, Dr. Fakin. We try our best here. We're getting back into the basketball a little bit. Kind of got away from basketball because of all the football stuff that was going on, and quite frankly, like basketball just doesn't do the same numbers that football does. So sometimes it's you know, justification isn't always there as much. But I know you guys like talking basketball, and I'm watching all these games anyway, so I'm watching the game. I might as well come on and talk about them. So yeah. Kevin Uptown Chicago says, as an Illini fan, I just don't fear Michigan or Michigan State. I don't think you should fear them, but I do think that they look like the best team in the country right now. But I don't think that means you should fear them. I think this Illinois team's got a whole lot of physicality in them too. I think they, obviously the length in them as well. They're one of the only teams out there that could rival the length of this Michigan team. I think actually Illinois is the longest, tallest team in the country on KenPom. So, but some of the length that this Michigan team has with, a Demara down there and Yaxel Lindeborg and some of those guys, like it's a lot to get through. But no, I don't think you should fear them by any means. Bro, casual return. I was just talking to Kent the other day. I need to get Kent back on here. He said he might come on for a power rankings episode at some point. So he sold his Twitter account, so he's not tweeting and all that stuff as much as he used to be. So whoa, Blue Wolverine, $20 super sticker. Thank you so much for that, Blue Wolverine. The $20 super sticker. Listen, hey, we're going to do a whole lot more basketball shows if we're getting super stickers and super chats like this. No, but seriously, thank you so much, Blue Wolverine. I appreciate it. Yeah, I really do appreciate it coming in here and being generous like that. So looks awesome. All right. Philip says Fitzgerald at MSU just looks wrong. They showed him in the stands and it did look weird. First I was like, is that Pat Fitzgerald? Yep, that is. I had it on mute because I was watching a different show with my wife at the same time, and so I didn't even how was Gus tonight? I heard him at the very end. Sounded like he was doing good. I like Bill Raftery though. I like Bill Raftery a lot. So yeah, but overall, man, this Michigan team looks really good, and Dusty May, he's the type of guy that's going to be able to get you far in the tournament as well. I think I have to go. I think I have to go with Michigan to probably be my team to win it all. I just don't believe in Arizona. Tommy Lloyd's a good coach, but I think Dusty May's a better coach. So, and I admittedly haven't watched enough Arizona this season to know, I watched them, a few games in the out of conference and stuff, but when it's in conference like this, sometimes it's harder to catch those games. But I mean, Arizona's good too. Don't get me wrong, but yeah. All right. Hey, we'll be right back. Gonna come back and talk about Amari Bailey and what's going on with that situation. So give me a few seconds really fast to bring it back. I just did that entire thing and I didn't have any sound. Oh, this is such an epic second half rant and audio fail for JR. Yeah, it is. We gained viewers somehow. I don't know how that happened. All right. Let me start over at this point because I just completely screwed myself, but I said everything I was going to say. So I'll just say it again at this point. Oh my gosh. This is what happens when I don't have Zach here with me. Got to get Zach back. All right. Here we go. Start again. UCLA could get a former NBA player back to rejoin the Bruins after he left for the NBA a few years ago because former UCLA guard Amari Bailey, now 21, is pushing to become the first basketball player to return to the NCAA after playing the NBA in an NBA game. He seeks one more year of a college season via waiver and lawsuit through the NCAA. So Amari Bailey does not want to come back this season, according to a report by Dan Murphy of ESPN. He apparently wants to come back next season and play one more year of college ball. He played one season at UCLA as a freshman, had a good season, did a good job, and he entered into the NBA draft as an 18-year-old, feeling like he left a lot to prove after some mistakes. The rumor out there kind of about the whole thing was that his mother was the one that was really pushing for him to go to the NBA and really wanted him to kind of make that decision and do that. But you know, at the end of the day, he's not coming out and saying that like his family made him make a mistake. His family did anything to him. That's just kind of the rumor from the recruiting stories that, you know, you can kind of look up and remember back from the day. But he would come back and his plan would essentially be to be a senior if he stayed or if he came back and just only play for one more year. So he's not looking to come back and like regain eligibility as a sophomore or anything like that. He's trying to come back for essentially his 5th year of eligibility in his window of 2026, 2027. His pro career, he was drafted in the 2nd round, 41st overall by the Charlotte Hornets. He signed a 2-way contract, not an NBA contract. He signed a 2-way contract and played 10 games as a rookie with very limited minutes. I mean, he didn't play. Wasn't like he was playing, 15, 20 minutes a game or even that. Like he was playing very limited minutes out there. He spent 2 years in the G League and was just cut this last summer. Overall, the story in ESPN says that he only earned $565,000 in his time in the NBA in the G League. And the argument is that like this is what a lot of guys in college basketball are making this year, right now. Like his entire time in the NBA and G League, there are guys in college basketball that are making the same, if not more, for some of those star players there. So he's starting to explore this seriously in 2025. He's hired an agent, he's hired a lawyer and everything. And his motives are basically, from what he says, he wants to improve his game, change his perception, and try to get back to the NBA. Whether that means he gets drafted again, I don't know how that would exactly all work. I can't imagine I can't imagine he'd get drafted again. I don't think I've ever heard of anybody getting, in the draft twice. Maybe I'm wrong, but that would be a pretty weird situation. It says he's been training twice a day in Southern California. Plans to talk to schools as soon as he possibly can and try to get this whole thing worked out so that way he can play next season. But by NCAA rule, I mean, they ban players who sign pro contracts unless the pay covers only, quote, actual and necessary expenses, end quote. So that's how they get around like the whole European pros thing. I think a lot of people out there are kind of like, well, why is this whole thing happening? If European players can come back and be pros and everything else, then, why can't Amari Bailey? And I think that is the kind of indicator there is that the Europeans oftentimes are not made the same way as the pros are with where they're making lucrative deals and all this stuff. They can reference it as like they're only making what is actual and necessary expenses, food, rent, stuff like that. In Bailey's case, he signed the same contract as the other guys who have come back, Bediako and Nanji. Now, Bediako, he was a G League player who was on a 2-way contract, and he won a court injunction to play despite the NCAA's denial. And that was, of course, through the Alabama booster and everything else. And so that whole story that's going on there. but he never actually played any time in the NBA. He played in the G League, but he never actually played any NBA games. Nanji, he was a 2023 draft pick, but he didn't play in the NBA. He played in Europe, never had an NBA contract, so that's why he was actually granted eligibility. I think he's at Baylor right now. It's where he's at, because that's where he went. The NCAA stance is that they won't grant eligibility for NCAA contract signers appealing Bediako's ruling. And I think that's the whole situation here, is that like he can say, well, Bediako's back, but the NCAA doesn't want Bediako back. He's kind of making it through with some of the rulings and stuff like that in Alabama court and things being a little bit more favorable to him. So this one right here has a lot of broad implications for college basketball, in my opinion. It tests the NCAA's eroding rules and waivers, the lawsuits. It tests the idea of NIL payments and being professional athletes and everything else, because, NIL is not supposed to be pay for play, but we all know it is. And at the end of the day, that probably won't work in court. These judges and stuff are they're not stupid. You can come in and say, well, it's not pay for play, but really it is. Everybody knows it is. Like, this is how it works out. So this whole situation, look, I'm all for player empowerment, but there needs to be some common sense and what should be no-brainer rules, in my opinion. All right, this is my take on it all. I kind of gave you the facts and tried to stick to all the facts there before. And I understand people saying like it wasn't an NBA contract, it was a two-way contract and everything else, but the guy literally played in the NBA. He literally played in games in the NBA. Sure, he's not an NBA star. It's not like LeBron James is coming back to college basketball or anything like that, right? But he literally played in the NBA. And so if you are on an NBA team playing in the games, that should completely rule you out, right? Also, nobody I guess maybe in California it's different. I don't know what it's like living out in California, but I can't imagine you're only living on food and rent with $565,000. Like, feels like there's a little bit extra going on there than just that whole situation. So to me, this looks like nothing more than a guy who couldn't cut it in the NBA, a guy who couldn't cut it in the G League, who says, hey, well, maybe I'll go back to college basketball. Looks like Bediako's doing that. And who knows? Maybe you talk to Bediako and Bediako's like, yeah, man, I'm making some pretty good coin going back to college basketball because Alabama wants me and I can be one of the best players on their team right away, And to me, it also kind of signals that Amari Bailey's trying to get back for an entire season to come back and do that and put himself out there on the market too, because that's the whole thing of this is like, would he come back and would he play for UCLA? It doesn't sound like he has any intentions of going back to UCLA. Not that he wouldn't go back, but it doesn't sound like that's like his goal and where he would go. Of course, Mick Cronin is still there. He was his coach back in 2023. Obviously the fans would love it. If you're a fan, you would want Amari Bailey coming back, older, stronger, faster, all this stuff. Like, yes, he didn't cut it in the NBA. It doesn't mean he can't be a great college player for you. But like, if it's me, like this doesn't feel like something Mick Cronin would do. This doesn't feel like something that Mick Cronin would go for, maybe some UCLA fans out there can tell me if I'm wrong, but Cronin is so much like a Tom Izzo. He is so much like, work with the young player and develop them and get them through everything else. Like, just doesn't feel like this is something that Mick Cronin would go for. But at the same time, coaches want to win. And Mick Cronin, he's not winning as much as he used to at UCLA right now, much to, many UCLA fans' chagrin right now. He's not doing bad. It's not like he's like 10-10 this season or anything like that, but it could be better. And I do wonder how that would impact things with him not coming back directly this season, but him coming back later on, right? Because by the time he's gonna like actually start meeting with teams and being recruited and stuff like that, we're gonna have the entire transfer portal mess going on. And I can guarantee you this would not be the biggest story out there with the entire transfer portal mess going on, because everybody's gonna be focused on their team. Who do we have coming in for visits? Who do we have coming in out there? I mean, the transfer portal time, like, it's the whole reason, if you're a content creator in college basketball, it's the whole reason that you want to be a college basketball content creator, because you can make, a year's worth in college football in 4 weeks of the transfer portal in college basketball, because it is so insane and how much people are looking for information and how much people want to know about the new guys in their team and just how much like teams are flipping their entire roster. Like, yeah, it happens somewhat in college football, but in college basketball, you're literally getting entire rosters flipped that season. And so with all of that going on, I actually feel like if Amari Bailey is able to figure this out and able to get back to college, it would actually work out for him pretty well. Now, obviously, there are going to be people that know about it, the diehards and stuff like that, but I don't think this would be front page news if it happened in the transfer portal mess because there's just so much more that's going on. I'm curious what you guys think about all this. Dr. Fakin says, just limit college hoops to 4 years and let the floodgates open. College basketball will be a huge talent boost as the results would be awesome. And that's the thing, too, is like there's a lot of people out there that are like, well, we just want to see the best, the best basketball. And if you do open it up, then yeah, you're going to see the best basketball out there. But then at what point does it just come into basically being the G League instead of college basketball, right? In that whole situation. So, I mean, it's all so crazy. This entire situation is so crazy. This is the new Alabama recruiting model. Yeah. Alabama is changing college basketball like Kirk and Eddie changed college football. So Joe says LeBron has 4 years of eligibility, I think. Hey, listen, if LeBron can come back to Ohio State, Jake Diebler might give him his entire salary to do that. Oh man. All right. Says better players are better to watch. I get it. Yeah. I get it. I get it for sure. And if that's your goal is you just want to see the best brand of basketball out there. Yeah. Sure. Like I get that. For me as a college basketball fan, I don't think that's what I want as much. Like, yes, I do want to see a really good brand of college basketball, but I also do have like the college pride aspect of it and the idea of like guys do kind of, develop and get older and work through stuff, but that's going away in college basketball too, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of people left college basketball is because of the one and done and everything else. So I get where you're coming from, Dr. Fakin there. And honestly, like if that's your stance, I don't blame you at all because I get it. It's not personally what I would want, but I get it if that's you. So, all right. Let's move on to the last thing here. This Ohio State story is really interesting. So I do want to highlight this story because it is really interesting. And I do think it has a lot of implications on the Big Ten and everything else that's going on out there. So we're going to take a break really fast. We'll come back. We'll talk about this entire story with Ohio State canceling games in the future and everything else because this is pretty interesting stuff. We'll be right back. Ohio State is canceling their future out-of-conference SEC opponents and Alabama and Georgia in 2027, 2028, 2030, and 2031, according to a report by Austin Ward out of Letterman Row, the On3 affiliate of Ohio State football. All right, or basketball too, I guess. All right, so I do want to say, I'm going to talk about this situation, but I do want to try to make the disclaimer. I am not defending this. A lot of Ohio State fans are probably going to watch this, and I do not want Ohio State fans to think I am like defending this, and I think this should happen. But I am going to talk about this from the standpoint of why this whole decision is being made. Disclaimer is this sucks. I don't like it. I don't want this to happen. I don't want college football to lose out of conference games and, for there not to be big games to be played on the outside. But at the end of the day, like college football is changing. College sports in general is changing. We just had the story of Amari Bailey and what's going on there. And if you're somebody that's trying to hold on to college football 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I think you're just going to end up being disappointed because we're never going to get back to the BCS. We're never going to get back to the 14 playoff. And quite honestly, with the playoffs expanding, it's just going to continue to change college football in a lot of ways. And one of the biggest ways is that it's an unfortunate reality of the system right now that has been created, which is, big games don't truly matter. Out of conference big games don't truly matter because they don't reward aggressive scheduling while handing out millions of dollars in financial reward for those making the college football playoffs, however you get there. Because at the end of the day, you can make money off having a team come and play you in your stadium, but that's going to pale in comparison to the check that you get in the college football playoffs, right? And so what's going to help you more, winning a game against Marshall or losing a game possibly against Texas, right? This is the Big Ten's effort, essentially. All right. Ohio State is eager to get more involved in the decision making of the Big Ten conference, and this is Ohio State's effort to try and make that happen. If you listen to my guy Greg Flugar over at Peak Around the Corner, you know that Greg has been talking about this for a little while, that Ohio State is very much so in conjunction with the Big Ten right now in some of their decision making. And so Ohio State is trying to comply with being the example for other big schools in the Big Ten, which is cancel your out of conference games. So that way the Big Ten can further do what they want to do moving forward. And also the idea that, you know, playing big games in your out of conference doesn't actually do all that much for you. You look at teams this season like Texas A&M. You look at teams this season like Miami, right? You beat that team and their reputation goes down, and other teams pass them up because they beat teams that are worse than them, right? Texas lost to Ohio State. Now, sure, they continue to play bad the next few weeks against some group of 5 opponents and stuff like that, but their reputation was shot in a matter of a few weeks because they lost that game. And then you see the rest of the season, nobody wanted to give Ohio State any credit for beating a good team in the very first game of the season because they just want to say, well, actually, Texas wasn't all that good, right? And then similar stuff for Cal or for Minnesota. Minnesota had something similar happen where they lost to Cal, and everybody thought, well, Cal's actually a really bad football team, so Minnesota must suck, right? When in reality, yes, Minnesota lost that game, but they also recovered and improved as a team and finished the season 7-5. Did they deserve to be ranked? No, not necessarily, but people didn't need to look at that Minnesota team and say, oh, they lost to Cal, they suck, right? Because people are going to think better about you if you beat Utah State, Marshall, and, you know, South Dakota. They're going to think better of you for doing that than if you win 2 games and then lose to Colorado or something like that. So the rankings have shown that they care more about your record than your wins. And I know that this was kind of an ESPN talking point a little bit for stuff like they wanted to look at more of the wins than the record. But Indiana, like, they started this whole thing, and Indiana has clearly benefited from this. And I've been vocal on my opinions on the Indiana scheduling. I don't like it. I want Indiana to play better teams in the out of conference, but I understand it. And that's kind of where I'm at with this with Ohio State too. Is like, I don't like that Ohio State is canceling these big out of conference games against Alabama and Georgia. I want them to play these big games. They're more exciting. They're better. You know, seeing these huge matchups in the out of conference is kind of what gets you excited for college football sometimes at the very beginning of the season. But at the end of the day, it doesn't help these teams out to get to the college football playoffs. The strategy that Indiana has implemented, play 3 easy teams and then get into your conference play and really kind of earn it in conference play, has benefited Indiana. Heck, they were just the number 1 seed in the playoffs, right? They didn't play anybody in the out of conference, and they were just the number 1 seed in the playoffs. Now, granted, they beat Ohio State to get there, but still, they were still there. So it goes to show that as long as your record is good and you're in the Power 4 conference like the Big Ten, that's what matters most. Not necessarily about who you beat or anything like that. Really, the only team that exception was made for this season was Alabama. And Alabama lost their out of conference game because they did so well in the conference and everybody thought the SEC is so good, they were fine. To me, the Big Ten is making this change for 3 reasons. The Big Ten's making it for 3 reasons. Number 1, for the time being, the SEC lacks the games advantage for the next year or 2, right? And the Big Ten gets it. For years, the SEC had the game advantage. They played less conference games. They played the Citadel and other FCS teams in the middle of November before they played their rivalry games. And nobody ever said anything about it. Big Ten fans like me said it all the time. They're like, you have to notice this stuff. But because the perception of the SEC was it's so good, it didn't matter. And one of the reasons why the perception of the SEC was so good is because they only played 8 conference games. Yeah, they won big games too, you know, give them the credit. They won big games. But at the end of the day, your record is what people look at more than anything else, especially a lot of these committees and people that vote on rankings and everything else. Like, your record is what matters to people more than anything else. And if you can get rid of one less loss for half of your conference, it's going to make your conference look a whole lot better. The wins you get. And if you lose to a team like Florida, right, who wasn't a good football team this past year, it's not going to look as bad. Another thing that the Big Ten wants to change is the Big Ten wants to add a 10th conference game as they continue to expand. It's not a very big secret right now that the Big Ten wants to keep expanding. They want to keep getting bigger. They want to keep doing more things and adding more teams. Well, the entire idea is, well, how are we going to add more teams if we're only playing 9 conference games? It's not enough. And so the Big Ten is trying to get Big Ten teams to cancel their big out of conference games. So that way they're not playing 11 Power 4 teams. You've seen how that's worked for Purdue. They've done that a couple times the last few seasons. It's not worked out very well for them because it's a lot. Even if you are playing a Virginia Tech, even if you are playing a Virginia, it's still a Power 4 team. It's still a lot, right? And the final thing is that, and this is probably the one that will make the people the most upset, but it's just a reality. And again, I'm not saying I like this. I'm just, talking about the reality of college football right now, is that the Big Ten doesn't want to see their biggest cash cow in Ohio State go and play on ESPN and not see any benefit from it, right? The Big Ten sees less financial incentive in out-of-conference games in the regular season than they do in the postseason. So instead of having your biggest cash cow and TV ratings in Ohio State go to Texas and be on ESPN, they say, well, let's actually have them play Kent State, Ball State, and Southern Illinois. I forget who their other team they play this season is. We're going to make more money off them doing that in the out of conference and then making the playoffs. And then sure, ESPN can have some stuff, right? But as we talked about, also, if the playoffs get expanded, Fox, CBS, and NBC can possibly buy some rights to the first round of the playoffs, and that could help them out there as well. At the end of the day, I feel like this all could have been avoided with automatic qualifiers. And that's one of the reasons why I advocated for automatic qualifiers so much. And I still do advocate for it. A lot of people said, well, it would get rid of, the meaning of the out of conference games and everything else. And my response was always, you're not going to have big out of conference games without automatic qualifiers. You're not going to have that because teams are not going to risk their perception by going out there and playing those games. Teams are more likely to miss the college football playoffs losing an out-of-conference game than by winning one, right? A team like Miami won their out-of-conference game. They barely made the playoffs, and they only got into the playoffs because Notre Dame got pushed back for a bozo reason that Alabama was up 17 points on Auburn, right? And BYU lost, and BYU fell down, but Alabama didn't fall down in the rankings after the conference championship game. That was the only reason Miami got in. Miami was not going to get in for a long period of time there. But because they moved BYU down, and it would have looked bad to have Miami and Notre Dame right there next to each other, they swapped the two and they put Miami in front of them. I know a lot of people aren't going to like this argument because not a lot of people like this team last year, and I get it. But if Texas doesn't schedule Ohio State in the out of conference, they go 10-2. They have a win over Oklahoma. They're in the playoffs. They remain over Oklahoma at 10-2. Because if you have the same record as another team, you will typically get ranked above them. Most times, right? Miami wasn't ranked above Notre Dame for a while, but they ended up that way. And Texas beat Oklahoma. So if you're looking at the record thing, the way they structure these things out with Alabama was 10-2 and they were right behind Oklahoma because Oklahoma beat them. Well, Texas beat Texas A&M. Texas beat Oklahoma. They would probably be up there in the top 10 if they wouldn't have lost to Ohio State. And who knows, they may not have moved as far down if, for some of their performance against those group of 5 teams, and maybe they wouldn't have performed like that against those group of 5 teams. So, the Big Ten plans for non-conference games to essentially go away for bigger matchups because they want those matchups to happen in the playoffs. It further brings the Big Ten away from the Big 12 and the SEC and the ACC. It's what the SEC has been talking about for a while. But if you follow college football and you follow the conferences a lot, you know that the SEC is the group that gets out there and speaks and talks about it. And meanwhile, the Big Ten is the one that gets out there and doesn't really say anything. They just act and they put it out there and they do things. And that's what they're doing here. And also there's some leverage in this too, that if ESPN wants to make money off the Big Ten, they need to put pressure on the SEC to expand the playoffs. So it's all a money thing for the Big Ten. And a lot of people are going to blame the Big Ten here. And don't get me wrong, the Big Ten does have blame. I'm not happy with the Big Ten based on this stuff either. I get it. I understand it. It makes sense, but I don't like it because I want to see big games. And I don't want the history of out of conference games to be ripped away from us. But that's probably what's going to happen. But the real enemy here is what Zach and I have been saying for years now. It's the NCAA. The NCAA is the real enemy here because they never centralized scheduling. They lost power over time with outdated beliefs, trying to have student athletes and this, that, and the other. And they completely lacked governance, allowing the SEC to have clear benefits with no repercussions. To let the SEC have 8 conference games all those years and never put anything on them or anything, and just continue to kind of let it be a playing field and everything else. A lot of people blame the Big Ten and said, well, the Big Ten, it's their fault because they went to 9 conference games. Okay. Are we going to blame the SEC now for the same thing, that they went to 9 conference games and added a forced Power 4 opponent? Or are we going to continue to blame the Big Ten? Because that's what everybody does. Because that's what the media does. Because nobody wants to go against Greg Sankey, right? But at the end of the day, it really is the NCAA's fault. Because the NCAA never stepped in with any of this stuff, and even when they could have stepped in with, agents and NIL and everything else, they never stepped in with that either. And so it's just a complete lack of understanding, a complete lack of ability, a complete lack of effort by the NCAA altogether. So the Big Ten's going to get a lot of heat on this. And like I said, I don't think the Big Ten is rosy clear in this either. But I think the real enemy here is the NCAA. Dr. Fakin says NCAA equals expired joke, what they let UNC get away with fake classes with proof of how corrupt they were. Yeah, exactly. It's not just that. Like, there's so many other things. And at the end of the day, the NCAA has never really been able to put rules in place, right? The NCAA has never actually been able to enforce their rules because so many different programs are breaking them. And that's the same thing that the CSC is going to have happen. And I remember talking about the House settlement, talking about how, guys, this is just the beginning of what's being formed here. And while it's not looked great so far, it is the process of getting rid of the NCAA. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to create the CSC. It's not working so far, but it also wasn't supposed to work right away. The entire thing with the House settlement and the CSC, the College Sports Commission, which is essentially going to become the new NCAA, is all this stuff. So, Fight on 90 says A&M is just another overrated, overhyped SEC program. And they get overrated and they get overhyped because they face teams in the SEC were in the bottom half, but because the SEC had a perception that they were just better than everybody else because of their records. Look at how many bowl teams we have and everything else. Because of their records, they get overhyped, they get overrated. But you look at the games against the spread and stuff like that the past few years, the Big Ten has been steadily building up. And the Big Ten actually had the best record against the spread this season of any conference. The SEC was third. It went the Big Ten, the Big 12, the SEC, the ACC was last. Joe says, I don't understand the argument that Notre Dame deserved to be in the CFP over Alabama. Alabama was the SEC runner-up. That should get you in the playoffs. I don't know if I would say that Notre Dame deserved to be in. I just thought Notre Dame was a better football team, right? So if I said they deserved to be in, I apologize for that. I shouldn't have said that because I do think deserving is a really slippery slope there. But I felt like Notre Dame was a better football team than Alabama this season. I think Notre Dame lost both their games early on in the season to other college football playoff teams. One of them was kind of a bogus one because of the holding, right? And so that whole situation happened. And I think you saw Notre Dame get better throughout the year. I thought you saw them perform better against USC. Dr. Fakin says Alabama won against Georgia. Notre Dame did nothing like that. Right. But they also lost to Florida State. Right. And Georgia beat them in the SEC championship, which excuse me, shouldn't disqualify you, but when Alabama is the only team ever to lose a conference championship game and not move down in the rankings, like, like you guys are making great points here. I look at the history and say, how did every single team that has lost a conference championship game drop in the rankings except for Alabama? And you can go back and look at it. I mean, go back and look at the college football playoff rankings. So again, I don't think it was necessarily that Notre Dame deserved to be in over Alabama. If I said that, that was the wrong wording. I just felt like Notre Dame was a better team, and I felt like Alabama was kind of overrated all season. So, and quite frankly, I thought Oklahoma was overrated all season too. Guess what? I thought the entire SEC was overrated. So, you know me. That's how I work out. So, all right, so that's what I got for you guys. Curious your thoughts on all of it. Let me know in the comments and everything else. I did not expect to be on here for 50 minutes, but that's what happens when you do an entire segment muted. So I'm gonna get out of here, guys. I appreciate you being on here with me. We'll do this again. I'll let you guys know next time I plan to come on for a live stream, or just look at the channel and see if we're ever live. Probably be talking about a basketball game or something like that. So thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.